You are listening to the IGC Gate Podcast, and I am Zayd Haji. I want to begin this episode with a thought that may feel uncomfortable, but it is necessary in today's world. What if the real threat to your career is not artificial intelligence, but the possibility that your value has been quietly commoditized without you even realizing it? In a time where tools can write, design, analyze, and execute faster than ever before, the question is no longer about what you can do, but about why you should be chosen. In this episode, I will challenge the way you think about skills, jobs, and security. We will go beyond surface-level discussions about AI and explore something deeper, something most people are not prepared to confront. I will break down why differentiation, trust, and ownership of outcomes are becoming the only real advantages left, and how you can position yourself in a world where being average is no longer sustainable. If you are a student, a professional, or someone trying to make sense of where the future is heading, this conversation is not optional. It is urgent. I want you to sit with an uncomfortable thought for a moment, not as a motivational line, but as a reality check that most people quietly avoid confronting. The fear you have about AI replacing your job is not really about AI. It is about something far more brutal and far more human. It is about the possibility that what you do is replaceable because it was never deeply differentiated to begin with. AI is not the root problem. AI is the exposure. When I look at what is happening today, I do not see machines becoming powerful as much as I see humans being revealed. For years, many people have been operating under a silent assumption that effort equals value. You studied, you worked, you learned a tool, you built a skill, and somewhere along the way you believed that this would secure your place in the world. But the market has never rewarded effort. It rewards perceived value. And perceived value is shaped by differentiation, trust, and outcomes, not by how hard you work behind the scenes. Let me make this more grounded, because this is where most conversations fail. Imagine a student in Mumbai or any crowded city, someone who did everything right according to society. They learned coding, maybe React, maybe Python, maybe some AI tools. They built a few projects because everyone said that is what you are supposed to do. Then they go online, open LinkedIn or Twitter, and suddenly they see hundreds, sometimes thousands of people with the exact same skills, the exact same projects, even the exact same portfolio templates. At that moment, the fear does not come from AI. It comes from the realization that they are one among many, and nobody knows why they should be chosen. This is commoditization, but not as a business term. This is commoditization as a human experience. It is the slow erosion of uniqueness until you become a line item instead of a choice. Now here is where it gets more uncomfortable. When humans compete with humans, there is still some breathing room. There is still negotiation. There is still personality, communication, slight variation in thinking. But when you are competing with AI, you are not competing with another human's limits. You are competing with something that has no ego, no fatigue, no minimum salary expectation, and no emotional resistance to repetition. If your value is defined purely by output, you are entering a race where the floor price is collapsing faster than you can adapt. This is why so many people feel anxious but cannot articulate why. They say things like, AI is getting too good, but what they really mean is, I do not know what makes me necessary anymore. And this is where most advice becomes useless. People will tell you to learn AI, adapt, upskill, but that advice assumes the problem is lack of tools. The problem is not lack of tools. The problem is lack of positioning. Let me explain this in a way that changes how you see your career entirely. The world is moving from a skill economy to an outcome economy. Earlier, if you knew how to do something, that itself had value. Today, knowing how to do something is just the entry ticket. The real value lies in whether you can take responsibility for an outcome that matters to someone else. This is why the concept of a manager becomes so important, even if you never hold that title formally. A manager is not valuable because they are the best at a specific skill. In fact, many managers are not the best designers, not the best coders, not the best marketers. Their real skill is something far more subtle and far more powerful. They reduce chaos into coordinated output. Think about how messy real life work actually is. It is not clean like tutorials. It is not structured like courses. It is filled with unclear instructions, misaligned incentives, ego clashes, delays, and uncertainty. Most people are not bad at their jobs because they lack skill. They are ineffective because they cannot navigate this mess. They cannot align people, tools, and timelines into something that actually produces a result. Now bring AI into this picture. AI does not remove the mess. If anything, it increases the number of moving parts. You now have tools generating designs, code, content analysis, but someone still needs to decide what to generate, how to refine it, how to connect it, and most importantly, whether it actually solves the real problem. This is where the opportunity quietly shifts. The person who survives is not the one who does everything themselves. It is the one who can orchestrate everything. Let me challenge another assumption you might be holding without realizing it. You might believe that being hands-on is the safest place to be, that if you are the one writing the code or designing the visuals, you are secure. But look at what is happening. The more hands-on your role is, the more exposed it is to automation. The more your value is tied to execution, the more vulnerable you become when execution becomes cheaper. This does not mean you should not learn skills. It means you should not stop at skills. You need to evolve from being a contributor to being an owner. And ownership is not about job titles. It is about how you think. When someone gives you a task, do you think, how do I complete this? Or do you think, what outcome is this supposed to create and how can I ensure it actually happens regardless of the tools or people involved? This shift sounds small, but it changes everything. Because the moment you start thinking in outcomes, you stop competing on effort and start competing on impact. Now let us bring in the Coca-Cola analogy, not as a business story, but as a psychological framework. Coca-Cola is not winning because it has a secret formula that no one can replicate. People have tried replicating it for decades. The reason Coca-Cola wins is because it has occupied a space in your mind that competitors cannot easily displace. You do not buy Coca-Cola because it is the best possible drink. You buy it because it is familiar, predictable, and trusted. It reduces uncertainty. This is exactly what you need to become in your career. Not the best in an absolute sense, but the safest and most trusted choice in a specific context. When someone thinks of solving a particular problem, your name should reduce their uncertainty. They should feel that if they choose you, the probability of things going wrong is lower. And here is the hard truth. This does not come from your resume alone. It comes from visible proof of outcomes. Most students and professionals focus on building skills privately and then expect recognition publicly. That is a broken model. In today's world, your work needs to be seen, understood, and trusted before you are chosen. This is why personal brand is not a buzzword. It is a survival mechanism. But again, not in the shallow sense of posting random content or copying trends. Real brand is built when people can associate you with a specific kind of outcome. For example, if you are a developer, do people see you as someone who writes code or as someone who can take a vague idea and turn it into a working product? These are not the same thing. The first is a skill. The second is a promise. And promises are what people pay for. Now let us talk about ground reality again, because this is where many people feel stuck. You might be thinking, this sounds good, but I do not have opportunities to prove outcomes. That is partially true, but also partially an excuse that the system has trained you to believe. You do not need permission to create outcomes anymore. The barrier to building something meaningful has never been lower. You can create a product, a service, a community, a solution using a mix of AI tools and your own thinking. The real barrier is not access, it is initiative and accountability. Most people avoid taking responsibility for outcomes because outcomes can fail. If you are only responsible for a task, you can always say you did your part. But if you take ownership of an outcome, failure becomes visible, and that is uncomfortable. But that discomfort is exactly where differentiation begins. Because while thousands of people are comfortable being told what to do, very few are willing to say, "Give me the problem, I will figure out the solution." And those few people do not compete on price. They do not compete on tools, they compete on trust. Let me take this even deeper. In the future, your career will not be defined by a single role. It will be defined by your ability to continuously integrate new capabilities into your workflow. You will use AI, you will collaborate with humans, you will manage processes, and you will adapt constantly. The people who struggle are the ones who try to hold on to a fixed identity. If you define yourself as a coder, a designer, or a marketer, you are limiting yourself to a function that can be replicated. But if you define yourself as someone who creates outcomes in a certain domain, you become adaptable. This is not just theory. This is already happening. The highest earning individuals are not necessarily the most technically skilled. They are the ones who can connect pieces together, make decisions under uncertainty, and deliver results consistently. So the real question is not whether AI will replace you. The real question is whether you are positioning yourself as a replaceable part or an irreplaceable coordinator. And I want to leave you with a perspective that might change how you approach your next step. Instead of asking, "What skill should I learn next?" ask yourself, "What problem can I take full responsibility for solving, and how can I prove that I can solve it?" That one shift will force you to think differently. It will push you to move beyond passive learning into active creation. It will make you uncomfortable, but it will also make you visible. Because in a world where everything is becoming commoditized, visibility backed by real outcomes is the new scarcity. And the people who understand this early will not just survive the age of AI, they will define it. If this episode made you pause, question, or even feel slightly uncomfortable, then it has done its job. Because the goal here is not to comfort you with easy answers, but to push you towards clarity in a world that is becoming increasingly uncertain. The age of AI is not removing opportunities. It is exposing who is truly creating value and who is simply participating in systems that are easily replaceable. As you move forward, I want you to reflect on one simple but powerful question. Are you building skills, or are you building outcomes that people trust? Because that distinction will define your relevance in the years to come. This is Zayd Haji, and you are listening to the IGC Gate Podcast. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and more importantly, start applying what you have understood today. I will see you in the next episode.